All right, boom. We're here. We are live. And hey, everybody's here. Okay, cool. I'm actually seeing numbers. Tape damage, a viewer supplied intro. Thank you so much again.
It's a great intro.
Oh, he did really cool stuff. He did one with like us talking about extra residue on dishes, whether it's there or not. He did another one with Mark Robert when he came on talking about, well, it's news with booze and I'm the Jew. So news with Jews with the booze and I'm representing all the people. And Grobert is amazing. Allison will be here soon. We have Emily D. Baker. She's the lawyer with the cursey words. How are you doing today?
I am the lawyer with the cursey words, everyone's favorite legal commentator. I have a new flavor of, I've got to share. I've got a new flavor of White Claw in here because I'm basic. I think there's a new word for basic now. I think like basic is over and it's chuggy, but I feel like I'm too old to be chuggy because I'm actually basic and I'm not a millennial. So I feel like that's a diss at millennials and basic is still a diss at like Z and no X and up. So anyway, I've got a watermelon White Claw. I'm very excited about it. I love the generational disses. I keep trying to keep up with them. And I'm like, I'm not a millennial. I'm a zennial. And it's weird to try to keep up with all the different disses because I'm right on that X millennial cusp. And it's a funny place to be because I see it. But we're also like the younger X's were in the workplace when everybody was like ripping on the millennials.
Right.
And now the millennials are like, shut up, we're 40.
I know, but it's so funny. I love talking to people like you and Nick Ricada, who technically are like, no, I'm X. It's like they're clinging to the X.
I'm on the cusp.
I have nothing to do with these people.
And now watching the millennials and Gen Z kind of fight the way that like Gen X and the millennials fought, though Gen X is like, we don't care, whatever. It was more the boomers and Gen the millennials. So now it's funny watching the difference with the millennials and Gen Z. So
yeah, I'm pure Gen X, high school with Breakfast Club.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm like, right. And I can tell you that Gen X, we hate both.
Yeah, everybody. That's the best thing about Gen X. It's like all of you shut up.
Yes, we are the middle child. You know.
Oh yeah, Gen X is definitely the middle child.
And like, oh my God, I hate everyone. Okay, so I'm having people have seen it before. Raging Bitch.
That's gorgeous.
This is actually the artist who did Hunter S. Thompson's books, like Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas.
Oh, very cool.
So he's a very, very, major pop culture icon. Mm-hmm. I forgot his name. Of course, Robert knew. Mark Robert's on from time to time, and we're doing a show together, as a matter of fact. So I'll start plugging that early. America's Untold Stories, Friday. First episode will be about CIA in Hollywood. Mark is a screenwriter. He works with Oliver Stone. He works with Thomas Jane. He's all over the place. So it's going to be really cool. We got the whole history of how the CIA has infiltrated and manipulated scripts and pushed stories and whatnot. Wow. So that'll be the first one. We're going to do different ones like LBJ, will be one, Bobby Kennedy's assassination, all the good, glorious parts of our fine history.
That sounds very fun.
Now, to start everything off, I always like to start things with more important, serious subjects. And I did an interview on Monday, and it was very good. This is
very serious. I think that's glorious. I love what your audience has done for you. And I just have to say, I mean, my only issue, I have one issue. Yes. I don't know if he would have worn leopard print because it's so Carol Baskin's thing, but he did wear so much leopard in the show that it's, I'm like, when does somebody give up the print? But I like it.
You know,
I think the hair is spot on. The eyebrow ring, it's perfection.
it feels so good to have hair again temporarily.
I don't
I
know if
just
that's the
kind
hair
of
you would wish for, though.
there's a
The
lot of
mullet is something on him. Did you watch Tiger King?
I did watch Tiger King. I'm kind of glad I watched it way early because didn't everybody have to watch Tiger King? It was so perfectly
It was part of
timed.
the pandemic handbook.
Yeah, the world
Like,
shut down.
yep,
And
get
there was
toilet
nothing
paper, watch Tiger King,
Mhm,
talk
mhm.
about it on Twitter or Facebook.
Absolutely. And I mean, you cannot imagine a better placed happenstance for it. To me, the pandemic was so perfect for like Netflix and Zoom that if I was conspiracy minded, which I occasionally am, I would say that they were behind a Wuhan lab leak because they benefited over everybody on the
They
planet.
definitely benefited. They definitely benefited. We saw Zoom have some early issues. Speaking of the Wuhan lab leak theory, we definitely had some issues for Zoom early on in the pandemic, and we had all the Zoom botting or Zoom bombing of different congressional hearings and school days and stuff like that. Like they definitely got their security locked up. And now, have you been on Zoom lately, Eric?
I have reluctantly,
Have you
but
heard the
yeah.
new voice when a meeting's being recorded? It now announces it. It doesn't just
Oh,
pop up with like a little red dot. If you're recording a Zoom, it now says very loudly when the record goes on, this meeting is now being recorded. And you're like, oh, well, now everybody can know, because it used to just be like a little dot up in the corner
good,
that maybe you could not see,
good.
but now it's a loud announcement. And then when recording stops, there's another loud announcement. This meeting is no longer being recorded. So there's no way to not know anymore, which fascinated me. I talked about a story Tuesday about an attorney that flipped off an appellate panel at the appellate
Oh,
court. And how do you not know you're on screen? But said he didn't know he was on screen, much like Henry Tubin. But let's get back to you talking about Carol Baskin, because we've wandered the way that an ADHD lawyer does and come back
no,
around to Carol Baskin.
welcome to
Yes,
News with News.
it was very well timed.
Exactly. And we have Allison.
Sorry, I couldn't figure out why my mic wasn't working, so I had to call my husband, who's my tech support, and he's like drinking in Ohio at some SWAT conference, and so anyway, we figured it out.
I love that. I
What'd I
love
miss?
everything about that story. The fact that he answered the phone while drinking in Ohio at a SWAT conference.
Oh,
is
he knows.
Brilliant.
Yeah, he knows
he
that,
wants to
like,
live.
yeah, happy wife, happy microphone, happy life. That's
Fair
in that
enough.
order.
He has
Well, you
to come
sound
home
great.
sometime.
Well, thank you for being on News with Booze, Emily. It really is exciting to have you on for. Did I miss anything? We're talking about Carol Baskin. I heard that's epic.
Yeah.
The whole thing was amazing. I feel like, Eric, your next life, you're going to come back as a detective for very odd, unsolved cases.
I think so. Eric just announced that he is doing a new series talking about kind of odd history.
Girl Bear. Yep.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
America's Untold Stories. I've talked to Allison. I talk all the time.
I'm sure it ties back so well to you being a detective and uncovering the things.
Yeah.
The funny thing is that what I uncover half of the time is Robert Barnes, who's a walking encyclopedia, a Mark Robert, who's a walking pop culture encyclopedia. And I just sit there and lean in and try to ask good questions every once in a while and just suck knowledge.
Eric, I think you're discounting, and I was thinking about this the other day, but I think you're discounting the fact that asking good questions is a lost art that has been squashed out of everyone. And now asking questions is like this crazy act of rebellion that you may or may not be canceled for. And it's very strange to me. But asking good questions is the key to everything. It really is. It's like, I don't have to know everything. I just have to know what to ask. Feels like a lot less burdens to know to ask questions.
Well, and like to ask
DA,
questions where you genuinely want the answer versus asking something like the White House press corps where you're just trying to entrap someone for Twitter. And I feel like there's a lot of pressure on people doing spicy interviews to really sock it to them, Otherwise, you must agree with what they're saying, which is problematic for a lot of reasons, but it can be a difficult position to be in when you're interviewing someone where, you know, they bring a little bit of controversy, and then you're like, okay, how rough am I supposed to be with this person? You in some ways you feel like you're inviting him over to your house, right? Like you don't want to rough him up too bad. You don't want to necessarily let him off the hook. You know, interviewing and the art of interviewing has really changed in the era of social media, I think, especially for mainstream reporters.
That's true. And with Carol Baskin, actually, that was very much a consideration because, and there's nothing I didn't say to her. I did ask her what it was like to be a walking meme. And
it's a fair question. It must have been really odd for her because she had a social media presence, but nothing like, I can only imagine what came from Tiger King.
Oh, well, and it wasn't positive. It wasn't like, oh, wow, you're Carol from Tiger King. Oh my God. It's more like, you know, where's
Carol Baskin killed her husband. It was a meme.
Yeah. And
that was a song. That was not me defaming Carol Baskin.
No,
it's an unsolved case.
There are some really funny songs with her. I'm going to try to find one, send it to you, Eric, that you can play. But did she ever say hello, all you cool cats and kittens?
I did not ask for that because I'm boring that way. I don't like to pull.
She didn't just do it on her own.
No, she didn't know what to think of me. You know, I mean,
that's fair.
But no, people don't, and I deliberately go in when I interview, not wanting people to know what to think because I want them to pay attention. And I actually spent a lot of time working on this stuff, and I find that the earlier I can set somebody off guard, the better the interview is going to be, because all of a sudden they're like, I didn't expect that. So now they're suddenly involved with their focus. That's really my primary reason for that. So a lot of times, I might be a little off kilter, or I'll be dumb, or I'll be silly. I'll be whatever it is. I just want to get a good interview. I'm very simplistic.
And the thing itself is not simplistic, which therein lies the magic, right?
Well, it's sort of like running. What is more obvious and easy than running, right? You just put one foot in front of the other and go. But if you ever train for a marathon, we can talk for weeks about what goes into running.
Yeah, it's very interesting to think about interviewing because I haven't interviewed really. I just have conversations. But as interviewing witnesses and stuff, there was never an agenda because there couldn't be, because as a prosecutor, you need the information and you need it to be authentic and real information. And if it goes sideways, you need it to go sideways so you can turn that over and maybe think twice about what you're doing, because the goal is really to get the answers, not to get a certain answer. So it's very interesting from Alison, particularly your perspective. Well, Eric too, from that media perspective of now there's kind of a gotcha moment or an agenda versus just seeing where the conversation goes and asking the next logical question to see what happens. It's a very interesting phenomenon.
There's so much guilt by association nowadays, right? And so if you associate with somebody who has even just a little bit of stink about them, then you become a part of that. And that's why I think that's an effort to silence conversations. If the mob comes after you for even associating, and now you feel like by guilt by association, now you're in the club, then it basically is like kind of a warning sign to people. Don't you dare associate with those people. Don't you find out what they think. Don't you even allow. I think it's an intentional way to divide people and keep us thinking that we have a lot less in common than we may actually have, and to keep pointing fingers at sort of the average person instead of taking a look at the infrastructure of those that are above us. If we keep just fighting the little guys on our own level, thinking that there are these big boogeymen in the closet, and if we dare even ask questions, then we're going to be part of the boogie woogie. What's the song?
I like that.
Boogie woogie. How does the song go, Eric? Come on, you know the song.
No. Oh, I love that. Put me on the spot. No.
Boogie woogie, two shoes. Isn't that how it goes? Anyway. Yeah, you become like a part of it. And so then people are like, well, I don't want to talk to that person. And then we never make any progress in trying to understand what's really going on. So we just stay in this toilet bowl of intellectualism where we never really get a grasp on, our adversary or whoever else it is that we've been set up to distrust.
Jingle Boy of Company B.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, chat.
I love the chat coming through with the like hive mind source knowledge. It's like we're just outsourcing information, which is fantastic. So
sure.
it's fantastic. But yeah, Allison, exactly what you said. And I talk a lot about pop culture, and I talk a lot about lawsuits in pop culture, and watching the phenomenon of kind of Rachel Hollis melting down on TikTok, but then watching everyone who had been associated with her being called by their audiences to make comment on it. And it was, we had associated or people who she had associated with, not myself, but had associated with, or were going to speak at her conference, and we're now all being called to comment on her having this meltdown on TikTok. And it's like, no, what do you have to say about it? You know, they know her behind the scenes. They might need a minute to talk about it. And do they have to talk about it? And everyone was like, yes, you have to talk about it. So that
I disagree with that.
Guilty by association is very interesting.
Because I the whole LA comic scene kind of went through that with Chris D'Elia and then Brian Callen. And that was a horrible case of seeing these, really tight-knit, close comedians just throw each other under the damn bus. And it was refreshing to see a couple of them be like, that's my friend, up yours. I don't know what he did. This is my friend. I'm not going to talk about it. Maybe he did. If he did, he goes to jail. That's terrible, but I don't know. I'm not going to talk about it. And, other ones were like, quickly running up because they get an extra couple minutes. I don't think that people necessarily need to talk about their friend, especially if they're actually friends. I'm like, we're all about being authentic, right? Well, be authentic, be a friend. Just shut up. There's so many other subjects out there you can talk about without going after somebody that is supposedly a workmate or friend or somebody else.
Well, and I also think that it happens so fast that for people who actually want information and not just supposition, you can't comment that quickly. I mean, yes, you can with somebody making a statement in the public forum. They made this statement. If you can ascertain the context of the statement, you can generally be like, okay, that's the context. But for a lot of things, you don't know what the facts are. And people are like, we need you to say, and it's like, what is the information? I don't feel like we have it all. And even saying that, I see as problematic sometimes for people. It's interesting. We live in interesting times.
Well, and actually that brings us to Allison. We were going to talk, and we might as well get right into the deep of it. Antifa, Lincoln Project. Did you fire a link over on that? And by the way, you were talking about music earlier. Tom McDonald's latest song is stuck in my brain, and what he did with the video is pretty amazing. I don't know if you guys have seen that.
He has Blair White in it, who I've been following for a couple of years.
Yes, he's doing a white rap video called Snowflakes, starring Blair White with him.
Oh, okay.
I mean, we're talking. I know heads were exploding. And the thing about Tom McDonald is he'll make a controversial statement usually within 7 seconds of a song starting.
I mean, that's a good hook because look, outrage sells faster than anything else right now. Outrage drives clicks. Outrage drives engagement. I'm not surprised. The people who like to troll are going to be the ones who win in the current climate. It's very interesting to me because outrage drives people faster than anything else.
What's ironic, though, is his outrage is things like saying, you call me controversial, but you hold up Cardi B as a model for kids. So that's his kind of controversy. It's like he's a conservative guy.
Right.
And that is the really, really, really controversy going on. And Dr. was saying
I will have to listen.
Yeah, definitely do. I mean, it's actually good too. But I have reached out to him and his girlfriend, and I don't know if there's any way in hell I'm going to get him on. He's gotten so big right now. He bought a beat off of Eminem for $150,000 and then released a song called Dear Slim, which is like I don't know how you call it. He called it, giving him flowers or something. I'm totally out of the scene, so it's very weird because I'm too old for some of this stuff. But I do enjoy what he's doing.
Interesting.
But let me see. Oh, what are you having tonight, Allison?
Oh, I'm just drinking one of my usuals, Elysian IPA, Immortal IPA. What are you guys drinking?
I'm basic, and I have a watermelon White Claw.
Oh,
like a
nice.
snowflake.
Okay. we just got back from a wedding at an RV resort in Nevada. If anyone's ever heard of Pahrump, it's about an hour outside.
I know exactly where Pahrump is.
You do?
Whoa. Isn't
I'm
that
sorry.
where they have a bunny ranch?
Huh? A what?
Isn't that where Bunny Ranch is?
I don't know. Wait, what did you call it?
The Bunny
That's
Ranch.
where Bunny Ranch is. That's exactly where it is.
Bunny Ranch?
Yeah, there was a whole TV show.
Like prostitution in Nevada.
It's really?
Yeah.
Dang, I didn't know that. I would have felt way cooler going to Pahrump.
It's they had a reality show.
Oh, man, I'm gonna go binge watch that.
Was it on Cinemax or show? Where was it on Cinemax or Showtime? I don't know. It was on one of those.
I'm totally gonna go binge watch. I'm gonna binge watch it.
I'm
gonna feel way cooler.
Pahrump, right? Yeah. Like, it
was the Bunny Ranch.
Oh yeah. So everybody was drinking White Claw at that wedding.
That's funny. I mean, I normally drink seltzer and vodka anyway, so it's pre-mixed. The flavors are nice. I can't drink beer because I'm allergic to malt and hops. So
probably good for your weight.
Getting to walk around and hold something in a can makes me feel like I'm not so left out in the summer.
Oh my gosh, y'all. Michelob Light now makes an organic seltzer. Give me a break.
What's organic about it? The vodka, the malt, the alcohol.
Days,
what's organic in it? There's organic Cheetos at the grocery store, which also makes me giggle.
Yeah. When I saw organic Doritos, I was like, okay, it's over. Doesn't mean anything anymore.
The corn's organic. The natural flavors are organic.
Yeah, there are so many things that can fit under the organic label now that basically if it's not DDT, it's organic, I guess.
Well, that's like meat naming. I mean, you have what is it? Choice, Select, and Prime. If you go get the meat. And now which one's good? Because you're like, okay, Choice. Well, Choice, that sounds pretty good. No, I want, hey, that's Choice. That's really good. Or Select. Oh, top of selection. And then you have Prime. So which one's the good?
I'm beyond those categories. I call myself post-organic. The people I buy my meat from, they would look at those labels and just you're free range. You're like, you know, the farmer. They don't even have my labels at the grocery store
the day before.
I'm an anarchic meat eater, I guess you would call me.
Oh, an anarchic carnivore. I like it.
Yeah, there you go. I'm an anarchic carnivore. Yeah.
When we moved out of Los Angeles to Middle Tennessee, we were amazed at how much easier it was to actually just support all the farms that we drive by. So we just do that now and we haven't bought a lot of meat
That's awesome.
or poultry from the grocery store because there's really no need to.
It's better quality. You support your local economy. It's cheaper usually if you can, especially if say you buy like half a cow versus you got a freezer or something like that. So yeah, I'm a big fan, and it just incentivizes, I think, farmers and ranchers. Like, okay, consumers do care about this because there are a lot of people in agriculture that want to do better, but if the consumers don't want it, then it's very hard for them. They're not going to go into debt, to produce something that people are like, let's go to McDonald's,
Yep. Alex brought up a good point though,
though we do that sometimes too.
In Wuhan.
My husband does. I do not. I found, oh my gosh. So in my Pahrump wedding nightmare, somebody gave us a hotel room, like someone in the family was like, oh, because we were driving in from Vegas with our kid who like take a nap and stuff. And like, you can use this hotel room. It's like somebody, I don't even know, like somebody's relative. And I walk in there and it's like my worst nightmare. There's 2 trash cans with probably each trash can had 6 or 7 boxes of like the 10 McNugget. And I'm like, who ate like 100 McNuggets, what? And so I'm like, I'm wearing a new dress that I bought at Whole Foods. It's like made out of organic cotton. And I'm like taking the organic cotton tag off and I drop it in the trash can. And it's like 10 boxes of chicken McNuggets and my organic cotton tag.
You're like, I have so many questions. I have
Yeah,
so
what
many
is going
questions
on
about
here?
how I got here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Stop this.
Yep.
You all right? Antifa.
Parched. What does that mean?
I don't know.
Thirsty without calling you thirsty.
I'm drinking a huge ball mason jar of. Actually, it's Kerr.
We've got the water for sure.
Yeah.
Because
All
balance.
right,
Balance.
Sure.
What is that in the coffee? In the Contigo, Eric?
This is water.
Does it taste like coffee in the Contigo? I've never put anything in a Contigo that's not coffee.
Well, you can rinse them out and wash them.
I think my brain would get.
believe it or
I think I'd get confused. I think I would. I'd be like, "This is supposed to be coffee," and then it would be water, and I'd be like, "No."
I do
don't know
both.
what it is.
I do both. I even do tea sometimes. Don't tell. Speaking of which, Dragon's Treasure, the dragonstreasure.com, use unstructured and get money off on the tea.
I see questions about Whole Foods selling clothes. Whole Foods does sell clothes.
They do, yeah.
And all kinds of stuff.
Mm-hmm. It was on sale.
And
I normally would not buy my
sold.
clothes at Whole Foods, but it was on sale. And I needed something for the wedding, so.
And it was going to be hot, I'm sure.
Yeah, it was 115 degrees there. And this is the first trip that I underpacked. I usually overpack big time, and this was the first time I was like, oh crap, I don't have enough to wear.
You didn't take into account
you have
the
your
sweat
daughter
factor.
Yeah, well, yeah, Lily's half my suitcase because she could go through 4 outfits or 1 outfit a day. We don't really, we never know, because she could drop a ton of stuff on herself. And so do you pack 4 outfits times 5 days, or do you chance it or whatever? So I just have tons of her stuff in there. And then mine, yeah, I've been trying to be more minimal about, but when it's 150 degrees outside, like you go through a couple different outfits because you're sweating your butt off.
Yep.
That's right. When somebody pointed out, and I meant to point it out, merch. I got my demonetized shirts in.
I like it. You don't feel like it's tempting the YouTube gods?
Well, I've got the video in another screen right now. So far, let's see if we've hit yellow yet. Nope, we're still green. But typically by 20 minutes or so, it usually flips to yellow, and then I hit the button to get a manual review, and then sometime the next morning I'll hear back that it's okay. It's quite aggravating. So,
I mean, my life with most of the content I put out, and I'm like, it's commentary on lawsuits. These are things written in lawsuits.
You're reading the law. Well, and
Yep.
Allison, she's worried about it because she tends to cover was it Viva Fry always calls it My Sharon of Cyrus.
Right.
And she'll like read straight from the FDA or the CDC documents, and it's like alarms go off. You cannot read actual government literature out loud.
No.
It's going to be so interesting to me because I see this push with larger news media trying to rein in the alternative news media on YouTube, and the push to like silence this, like these people on YouTube saying things. It's like, yes, well,
the CEO of YouTube, the CEO Susan Wojcicki actually went on and bragged about removing like 10,000 channels, and was talking about. It was so ironic because she had her interview literally within the same day or two of Project Veritas releasing the CNN producer, who was saying that the only people who are actually going to give you real news are people on YouTube in their basement. And she was talking about how you can never get real news, that these are all people in your basement that she had to suppress. And I was just laughing because it was such a perfect juxtaposition of that. So to YouTube, the only independent media that they'll accept is like Young Turks.
There was just there's one ruling and one lawsuit. There was a recent ruling out of the state of Washington determining that a YouTuber was not news media.
I just did that.
Yeah, for the purposes of a POI request.
I had that guy on my channel, the guy who was at the center of the case.
Oh, no way. I can't wait to go watch it.
Yeah, and the critics, of which there were a few, were like, well, he wasn't really doing journalism because he was kind of stoking the fire with this cop. There's a whole backstory to it. The only thing that mattered to me really So the backstory of why he filed that public records request is kind of it's a little bit dramatic. But the judges, in their opinion on why they were turning it down, did not include the reason he filed the public records request. Right. It was just that
not relevant.
Didn't qualify as a news media outlet for basically the reason of not having an LLC. And so the critics are trying to use because what happened was basically he was at this courthouse and this cop wanted him to leave and he was like, I'm not leaving. And then the cop pushes him and he lands on the ground. And so then he wants to know who is this cop and then who are the people, because then they end up taking him to jail.
Right.
And he says that he was stripped naked. And so he was filing the records request to find out who these officers were. And he wanted to basically put them out there. Like, these are the names of the officers. This is what they did to me. You should be careful. And most of his channel is basically just like filming in courtrooms and just putting that kind of stuff out there. Like, this is what happened. This, and he's not he's not a fan of judges right now. He feels like judges are really biased. They're protecting power structures and that kind of thing. And he was also running for sheriff. So there are all these things that if you don't want, you're not like kind of a free speech advocate and you're wary of just like redefining what a journalist means, you'll use that, the reason he filed the public records request, to discredit him. But to me, it's like, since the judges didn't use that to deny him, I don't know why that matters. They never said, you were running for sheriff, or, you were obstinate with the cops, or any of that stuff. They just said, no, you're just not a news media outlet because you basically have no employees and you don't have a corporate license with the state, which I think that's wrong.
You're absolutely right. The backstory was irrelevant. Sorry, go, Eric.
No, I'm sorry, but I mean, who cares if it's a journalist? Should public not have rights to request records?
So they do. Records? I read the opinion too, because I'm talking about it Friday. They do. There are a few exceptions where there's only certain information you can get if you are news media, because generally the public, and that's in Washington specifically, generally the public has access, but didn't have access to the names, photos, and I believe it was dates of birth of the police officers that were like on duty. So he could only get the redacted version under the statute in Washington. His behavior is irrelevant to the court's analysis of, does he meet this definition? And I think the court and the dissent both said it was time to update the definition of what news media is, but they're not I actually respected the court's decision.
Yeah.
We're not legislatures. We're not here to change the law from the bench. This is what the law says. This is how it applies here. It probably is out of date, but it's not our job to change it. So now, go change it. And
and I don't
like the result, but I understand the reasoning.
I missed that part. I must not, I don't know if that was at the very end or somehow I missed them saying that, because I wish I had that piece of info when I was interviewing him. And hey, if you want, he would go on your channel if you want to interview him, or feel free to take some soundbite from my
interview. I'm absolutely going to watch your interview as I talk about it, because normally I just go through how the process of law works and how the judge's reasoning works. And I generally lean more towards not legislating from the bench, particularly when judges aren't vetted the same way that politicians are generally. And it's not their job to legislate from the bench. It's their job to uphold the laws as written if they're constitutional, or say if they're not constitutional, and come to the result that the law demands, regardless of whether people like that result or not. And this is one of those cases where I don't like the result because I think the definition of news media needs to be broader. But they did the right thing by the law as it was written. And I like that they weren't being activists about it, because it's not their job. So there's another suit that I just saw mention of, that Google's being sued, saying that they are a like a common carrier and a kind of public utility, not a public utility, a common carrier type of a lawsuit against Google. So I think we're going to start seeing more of those public commons types of lawsuits, which interesting juxtaposition of the two.
Well, I think we have to. I mean, especially like Google. Go find something. Go buy something. When, Google not only is the number one search engine, it's also the number one video search engine. So the top two search engines in the world, Google and YouTube. Then if you want to go buy something or see an ad, Google Ads Services is all over everything. You cannot escape that. And then they own properties like Kayak and everything else, and they can raise the result. So there's so many problems, and I know I'm mixing them together because some are antitrust, some are suppression, so I know it's multiple things, but I'm saying they're very, I think the millennial term would be they're very problematic.
They are it's problematic. I have questions. I generally have a lot of questions about how intertwined everything is and how our kind of technological life has blended in and bumped up. I mean, we should have more speech, but with technology, I'm seeing less. Like those kinds of things are confusing to my brain because I tend to be able to separate. And y'all are in the same boat with me, but I can separate like, oh, this is what I'd like to see based on my personal feelings, but this is what the thing is. And so the feelings don't always overlap. And
you would be a good journalist.
Well, it was
not
prosecutor.
now.
Your personal feelings as a prosecutor don't get to come in.
Fired, yeah.
True.
You end up quitting.
Your feelings as a prosecutor don't come into it because your job is not to convict someone. Your job is to get the just result. And sometimes the just result is, I know this in my gut, but I cannot prove this in the court. So we have to.
Hey, speaking of journalists, let's talk about Brian Williams and Antifa and D-Day. Do you mind,
yes,
Eric?
I don't mind. I want to hear what you have to say.
Well, I want to hear what you guys have to say because I did this video.
We have the video. Send me the video. Let's watch the video together.
You want me to send it to you?
Yeah. If you have a quick link to it, let's just watch his segment.
Okay.
And that Lincoln Project video.
Maybe you could just real fast explain to people briefly what we're about to watch, Eric.
Including me, people.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go. Well, good. You're a clean slate.
I've been watching too much Housewives lately.
Oh, Brian Williams, the hero of Iraq who drew fire like Hillary Clinton. Oh, wait. No, that was his lie. Went and closed off his newscast with a video that's put together by the Lincoln Project. The Lincoln Project is a fairly controversial band of Republicans who most especially don't like Trump. I would say that's one definite condition, is that they're very anti-Trump or anything about Trump. And they tend to be kind of the Joe Scarborough type of Republicans. So many conservatives, et cetera, can't stand them. And they're not, they're generally the Republicans that will be picked up for a soundbite from a lot of mainstream media. But let's see. Okay, here we go. I got the video. Anyway, they released a very patriotic video, and I'm being deliberately vague because I don't want to spoil it. I've already, slandered them to a degree, or I didn't slander them technically, but I've expressed opinion.
You've expressed your opinion.
In what I've said.
I had a long talk with Eric this morning because I have a secret video that I've released on my other platforms that has not been released on my YouTube channel. And I think what I'm planning to do is add our discussion about this to the video I'm going to release on YouTube just to get a variety of thoughts. So it'll be good to have your fresh reaction to it.
All right. Hopefully I have sound that's going through.
I hear it.
Okay, good.
I don't see it though, Eric.
I need to put it up on the screen though.
There you go.
To see it.
Now fast forward like 40 seconds, Eric, because he just talks about D-Day for 40 seconds and then he goes into the Antifa stuff.
It's 2 minutes. We'll watch it. We'll get full context. I want to be fair.
Why not?
Last thing before
fair use commentary.
Tonight, an important anniversary coming up this weekend. We hope you can take a moment and remember it. It was beyond bold. It was outlandish. Over 150,000 men invading the French coastline under withering German fire to begin their march across Europe, where they would go on to win World War II 336 days later. While others will debate whether or not we could possibly mount such a thing today, and
I'll just pause it from time to time for the fair use aspects of it.
At least he acknowledged kind of that D-Day happened.
Oh, no, he did. This is where it gets
We're
really, really
glad.
interesting. And by the way, the main part we're going to be playing is an ad. So I imagine that you want your ad to be shared widely, but you never know. So we'll continue.
Broken as we are, there was a time when we saved the world from tyranny and fascism. If it wasn't our finest hour, it's hard to say what was. And the folks at the Lincoln Project are out with a reminder to all.
Who is Antifa? They stormed the beaches of Normandy, parachuted into the French countryside, and gave their lives to face down and fight back against fascism. They took down Nazi machine gun nests, tore apart the Third Reich's strongholds, liberated concentration camps, liberated France, Italy, Belgium, Holland. Anywhere Antifa saw fascism, they fearlessly and relentlessly annihilated it. Fascism was defeated because of patriots like these, proud Americans who knew that the fight against fascists was not simply a battle between opposing nations. It was a war against inhumanity. A war that isn't nice, but cannot be lost. A war we still fight today. Anti-fascism, it's not a cable news talking point. It's an American ideal that should be memorialized because it was paid for in blood.
Okay. So, and I don't need to see any more on that. And where do we start? Let me go with the first issue. Antifa was not even a word in that time. The word did not even come about till the earliest reference is possibly 1955. And they were not Americans. So the whole premise of that video is saying, and what they're really missing is we need to intersperse some good Antifa footage, like, how about a bicycle lock smashing somebody's head in? Oh, that's a good one in Oregon. And maybe we could burn a couple federal buildings while we're at it. Maybe a couple
like chasing the mayor down.
We could intersperse it and talk about the heroism of
and beating up journalists who are trying to cover them.
Oh yeah, good. Andy knows.
So my big question is for both of you, when you watch that, do you get the feeling that they're talking about anti-fascism as an ideology, which I guess we would probably all say we are, or are they talking?
I think we
about
can all agree that
Antifa
fascism is bad,
Yes.
but I think that they are trying to conflagate the idea of anti-fascism and the group Antifa as to being the same thing that is then represented by World War II soldiers storming the beach at Normandy, which I'm not following.
Well,
because it almost is like they're setting it up so that you to like reclaim Antifa, so that if you try to criticize what has happened in, say, Portland, for instance, over the last year, then all of a sudden you just love fascism.
I think that's exactly what it is.
To conflate those two so that
it's a straw man.
It's absolutely a straw man.
No, it's a bullshit straw man argument, because they're saying it's a lot like anti-racism, by the way. And I'm sorry to bring that up, but it's a matter of saying, okay, are you anti-racist? That's like a philosophy or a group. Now, you could be against racism, but not be anti-racist. They're not mutually exclusive, but it's a trap. It's like if you say, what? No, I'm not a part of that group, or I'm not Antifa. Oh, so you're a fascist. No, I'm not a fascist. I don't like either of you.
I just feel like we're back to like the marketing problem with the Federalist, anti-Federalists. Like once the anti-Federalists had to pick anti-something, they kind of got on the losing end of a lot of the debates there. And it interests me that now they're trying to set up this debate that the ideology and the group are clearly one and the same. And clearly that is the group that saves democracy through brave, heroic measures, and war's not pretty, and everyone needs to stop being
here's
so
Barnes.
sensitive about it.
It's like calling the Klan an anti-communist.
Hello, Robert Barnes.
So yes. It is mind-boggling.
It does seem like oftentimes the way that things are defined is done in a way, and we kind of talked about this earlier in the live stream, to discourage conversation or dissenting viewpoints,
sure,
or even nuance. even nuance. Because
Even
as
nuance.
somebody who has covered people who are Black Bloc Antifa rioters, I just never, I mean, I'm not saying that never in the history has this ever happened. I'm just saying in Seattle, when that would be, part of the May Day experience, if you will, if you want to come to Seattle on an interesting day, come on May Day, because the protests are usually pretty peaceful during the day, but then it just turns into all hell breaking loose at night. And, there wasn't a bunch of neo-Nazi groups out that were being confronted by Antifa. They were just there, smashing windows and setting things on fire and just pissed, just generally pissed. But they weren't like, there wasn't like Seattle was this hotbed of white supremacy or something. I mean, come on, they were surrounded by mostly like-minded people, but still setting the city on fire,
Well, I agree. And the problem where this all stems from is we spent some time together earlier, Allison, we talked over and over because they're so far off the rails with this bullshit lie. I mean, it is beyond the pale that it's almost brilliant because it's so far off the rails that you're kind of like, wait, they couldn't be that crazy. There must be something there, because why would they actually be that bold? It's like when somebody lies to your face and it's so transparent, so obvious, you almost are going, no, that can't be. That's just too obvious. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's something wrong with my head, because how could they be just lying that much? And I think it makes you second guess yourself to, the degree where you're like, And then she also brought up that nobody else is covering this, other than, the post millennial, all the, right wing groups. And so she's like, am I stepping into a trap? Is this something, going on?
Well, because like here's the thing, as a journalist, I know how my industry frames stories. Okay. I know how we pick something that's going to be the focus and we write a headline a certain way. And so it's like from the very second the reader sees something, we've already framed for you how to look at it. So I know the tactics. So I just want to make sure that, okay, I watched that video 10 times to make sure I understood exactly what, because listen, Eric, you can pull up the Twitter feed. I'll send it to you. But there are people responding to that on Twitter that are like, this is awesome. This is amazing. Sure. This is the best video the Lincoln Project has ever done. Yeah, screw the GOP. These are Republicans who hate, what the GOP has become.
Did you look at, hold on.
It's just crazy though. How can people have such different takes on the same video? That's when I start going, all right, what is going on here? That people can watch the same thing and have just such divergent views of it.
They're not,
because a lot of people have lost the ability or desire to critically think, because asking questions opens you up for public mockery, ridicule, and name calling. And so people are just like, I don't want to do it. I don't want to question it. But when you understand, and that's one of the, law things, when you understand the way that people frame arguments, and you're coming at it from a journalistic standpoint, Allison, when you understand how arguments are framed, you can see the straw man being set up, that they're trying to frame a narrative where the ideology and the name of a group are now becoming inextricably linked. And so if you question the one, you're obviously questioning the other. And that is the trap. That's where you're setting up for the fall. Because if you say, wait, whoa, what are you all doing here? Then it's like, oh, you have a problem with our brave veterans? You're literally using a moment in history to try to push an ideology. It's bananas to me, but that's just me.
No, you're right. And it's actually very effective. And one thing I told Allison, you brought up the Twitter feed, a couple things. First off, those people responding, go look at their timeline. I bet you a good majority of them are not Republicans. They're not pro-conservative angles or whatever. The Lincoln Project, to me, is nothing more than Media Matters Part 2. David Brock. I told you to look up David Brock, and whose timeline did we look at? Glenn Greenwald. Glenn Greenwald is no friend of the right wing or Republicans, but he's a pretty squared away journalist in general, and he does tell the truth. And he's the first one to say that Lincoln Project is Media Matters back then. I mean, this is so well done. And I think I need to step back and give it the respect. And that's part of why it makes me angry.
Being propaganda.
Oh, it's fantastic propaganda.
Yeah.
It's extremely well put together. It's a nifty little trap that, we're spending a lot of time talking about something. Again, this is bullshit. I mean, right on the very face of it, it is absolute bullshit. But you're going to have people questioning it because it's like, well, wait a minute, are you trashing the heroes? As Emily said, no, I'm actually honoring them because I guarantee, let's go back in time and say, here's this guy with a bicycle lock and black bloc. That's who you are, right? When you were fighting the Germans and the Italians, that was you, right? And they said you're Antifa. Oh yeah, let's talk to some veterans to see how they would enjoy.
Well, we have a classy mom who's a law nerd and one of my mods in the chat who said, as the mom of a U.S. Marine serving those groups too, I'm offended by their use of our American military. And I think that unfortunately, what I see is if you say anything to stand up for our military on social media, you also get screamed at saying, hey, is this an appropriate use of our military or of a historical event to frame this issue? So.
And
what if they said, hey, we're just trying to give anti-fascism a better nuance
marketing campaign.
It's been taken hostage by.
We're trying to rebuild its image. We're cleaning it up.
It's been taken hostage by Trump, and it shouldn't just all be relegated to the black bloc Antifa of the Pacific Northwest. And what if that's what they would say to you?
Then they should have said anti-fascism and continued on with the ideology.
Yeah,
then talk about the ideology.
So you think by
Americans
saying
who were anti-fascist, even.
So you think by saying who is Antifa that they're directly connecting it to what we've seen in Portland and Seattle?
Yes, that's how that's how I interpret it. That they're trying to blur the lines between reporting on a group called Antifa and an ideology, and then they're trying to conflagate the two of those and put it on. Look, but our World War II military is Antifa. It is this group. It is the same thing. Storming the beach on D-Day is the same as storming Portland. That's how I took it. That they're trying to draw that analogy that it is the same thing.
They did have a little tussle at the end. If you noticed in the last protest, there was like a couple people getting, and that's when I was like, okay, because they're not showing you the full on like chasing Ted Wheeler, out of the area in Portland, but they did show you a little bit of a tussle in the street. So it's like, just to give you enough to be like, I think
they're trying to tie storming the beach to the protests that happened in the US. And I think they're trying to tie the two of those things to being both taking down fascism.
And Trump is Hitler.
Well,
in the way that they showed that there, absolutely.
Well, and that's the
that's the kind of linear that they want people to draw.
Every part of it though is just bullshit because let's take the whole thing. Let's say anti-fascist, which could be used at the time. There were no American troops that were, quote, anti-fascist. They were troops that were fighting in a war against Italy and Germany and other forces. Anti-fascist forces were within Italy and within Germany that were fighting amongst themselves. So the second they said the word American, the whole thing fell apart just automatically because you have the timeline, you have the issue. There's no parallel at all. They're painting a completely false narrative and they're riding off the backs of the greatest generation, if you will. It's pretty disgusting in all ways.
I don't know how it just goes to show, I guess, like what kind of echo chamber MSNBC is in for the production staff to think that just like made sense. I don't even know how they did.
You worked in there. It's like, it's like they're just saying the quiet parts out loud.
It felt like the structure of a political ad to me.
Yeah.
It had that same pacing. It had the same music. It just had the same delivery as a political ad. Which, I mean, I worked in politics, in undergrad, and did a summer making political ads, and I'm like, oh, the music, oh, the pacing, oh, the Like I didn't work in the
Welling
media after that. I went to
Well-
law, but it has that feeling to me.
And
And it's
if
well
there
done.
is any topic that Brian Williams is an expert about, it's being embedded in war, right? So
Well, and not only that, okay, so we have Brian Williams, the obvious
Who's
war
lied about
hero
it, right?
who took helicopter fire like Hillary
Right.
Clinton. And then we have the Lincoln Project, whose head is under investigation because he likes to touch all the wrong people and threaten them. Oh, yeah, that Lincoln Project. Yeah, so it is headed up by
It seems like I was looking at the Lincoln Project Twitter feed, and it looks like their videos are regularly played on MSNBC on Brian Williams' show. So this is not like a new
Como
thing.
did it too. Barnes is saying Como did it too. Showing the Normandy landing and calling it Antifa.
Oh Lord.
So of course, well, that makes sense now.
We all missed the memo that this was a talking point.
Well, I mean, now we know we've gone to the toilet. Okay, so Como, yeah, okay, yeah, perfect source for garbage.
Understand.
Well, I mean,
I don't
between
understand
him and his
either.
brother, I mean, woo, boy. Now we can maybe have a trifecta and get Don Lemon to say something.
Yeah, well, no wonder you're not getting any fair coverage of what's going on when there's actual destruction by Antifa.
And David Brock. Now, Barnes, I know you're wired into all this. Is my analogy of the Lincoln Project, Media Matters, and David Brock a fair point? So let me know
Also,
in
the chat wanted to know if we've gone yellow yet.
Oh, so far we haven't. And again, folks, because
It's
I go
an
yellow,
excellent point.
you have this fine shirt. And yes, we're yellow. All right, so let me go ahead and put in my review.
Harold
Criticize
Harold said we're yellow now.
We are
It's
yellow.
so funny. The monetary incentivizing of stay in your lane. I don't know. We're a question everything family over here, which I realize has led me to raise very annoying preteens because we literally question everything. But I feel
What are
like
we gonna do?
we need more of that. And
Mhm.
I miss all the weirdos that would question everything.
Yeah.
I guess they're all here on YouTube
Well, they're in this
until we're all
room. They're
demonetized.
shrinking. Okay, well, okay. Brock is more nasty than, yeah. I'm saying the Lincoln Project hasn't grown up to be full David Brock yet, but they're on their way. And more effective, but similarly compromised ethics. Yeah. David Brock is, oof, boy, he's a prize. Actually, I don't know who's worse or who's more dangerous, him or Hillary Clinton. I mean, it's a tight race.
That's pretty bad.
I've got a question for both of you that I've been curious about because I was surprised and maybe I shouldn't have been. But again, I pay attention to
just
silly
disappointed.
things. Oh, Barnes, I'm fucking sorry, man. I don't like always curse when I'm in other people's houses. It just when I talk about law shit, it comes out more. But this is like serious shit. Either way, what did you guys think of BuzzFeed coming in hot with the public records request for the Fauci emails? Like I was surprised at the source.
Well, BuzzFeed did that for some banks, didn't they? I mean, they had a
They've
big
done it
bank
before.
expose about how these banks basically are protecting criminal activity. So they have a precedent of asking for public records. So I wasn't totally shocked by that, but
I think they're the least serious, though. I mean, to me, this feels like a Friday night dump. Oh, wait, it was on a Friday night. So if you're going to get it out there and the story's going to break, do you want it to be the New York Times or do you want it to be, oh, it's BuzzFeed, which automatically kind of lessens the impact on a Friday. It's BuzzFeed. And then it can kind of roll out, but it loses some of the pure teeth. And that's my opinion, is that, you know, BuzzFeed is a nice place for a soft landing.
I don't know.
You know,
I think
here we go. Barnes thinks that Fauci's people fed it to them to limit the damage because
maybe.
it was coming out with judicial watch. So I'm not that far off. Okay.
yeah.
Interesting. That's why I asked
I-
because I don't watch the media watching everything else, and that's why I ask people smarter than me.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I could see that.
Oh, wait, but you're here. So, well, Allison's smarter.
I'm not
I'm
smart.
I'm here to listen to y'all.
But well, I mean, it is possible that say I bet the government could have figured out a reason to block the release if they'd wanted to like go to court. Oh, this is sensitive information about a public health crisis or blah blah blah. So, maybe it was intentionally released at a certain time for a certain outlet.
I think it was coming out because if it wasn't here, it was going to come out internationally. Either way, that's too big to contain.
But I will say,
it already had leaked out in the Medium article. And they had respected scientists already that were coming out and saying, "Yeah, sorry, but there is something there."
It's just another example, though, of how, depending on your partisan bias, you may just not even care about them. I was watching David Pakman, mainline liberal David Pakman's read on it, and he's like, he doesn't care at all. He doesn't think there's any smoking gun whatsoever. Then you watch.
No, but if really Giuliani says something, then he needs to be put in shackles and burned alive.
But I'm just saying, like, I hear this over and over again. I remember back when Trump was running. I was still in the news business, and Trump was running for president. Oh, this time, the grabber by the what, like he's never gonna get elected, or like, and it just because for the other side. Like if you love, we're just at this point now where it's like we do this hero worship of people. And so the folks who think they're the devil, on the other side, they're like, this is going to be what fries them. But the people who are doing the hero worship are like, nah, it's fine. Because we're just at that point now where we're just living in totally opposite, like upside down realities. And so when I force myself, to listen to different viewpoints, even if it's like listening sometimes to fingernails on a chalkboard and like, I see how it all comes in on my YouTube feed and some of the sort of more mainline liberals are like, oh, this happens and Republicans are going crazy. And then the conservatives are like, can you believe this happened? And the liberals don't care. And it's just a mess, and there's no better place to see that in just like my subscription feed of how it all shakes out. I don't think people care anymore. If it's their guy or their hero, they just don't care. They'll let anything go. And then if it's the person they don't like, they won't listen to anything they say. They can't do anything positive. There's no contribution whatsoever. And there's just, the line has been drawn.
It's very interesting that the line has been drawn and it's kind of killed critical thinking. And I see that even when I talk about stuff on different sides of the aisle frequently, because again, if the law is written this way, then the outcome shouldn't really be political. The outcome should be based on the laws written this way. And this is the outcome. And if you don't like the outcome, change the legislatures, change the law. But it's interesting seeing everything so politicized down perceived party lines that people can't be like, oh, if this result happens in this context, I like the result, so I don't give a fuck if the law was followed. But if I don't like the result, then I'm very, very angry. It's like, no, we need to care about all the results. We need to figure out how we get here. And maybe that's me being naive and still trying to keep the rule of law being something to keep everything from going off the rails, but we'll see.
I just had another friend call me yesterday and say he quit his TV news job. And he told the news director and his station that it was, he told the news director specifically that it was about bias coverage and just like basically the ethics of everything. He just feels very uncomfortable. And then also because family stuff, I want to spend more time with family. And the news director goes, so basically it's your family, right? You just want to spend more time with your family. He's like, no, I would keep at this job and like work hard if I felt like what we were doing was not creating exactly the environment that we're talking about right now. And so people are jumping ship, realizing the harm that's being done and the consequences that have happened.
We're seeing that happen in prosecutors' offices across the country as well, because prosecutions become so politicized.
Oh, you have a great DA in LA now.
The victims' rights organizations are not quite as loud as some other organizations. And so we're seeing DAs being asked to actually go against their legal ethical duties to follow office directives. And people who are actually in the job to do the job are leaving. And I worry that we're going to end up with very politically motivated prosecutorial offices, which is always bad for everybody. So I have concerns. We can't talk about the LADA, Eric. He's had 17 or 18 votes of no confidence now. The recall is well underway.
You have a mayor. No, you also, it's not your city anymore, but the mayor has left for another job in the middle of the night.
Yeah, the mayor
Ambassador.
ran.
Bye-bye. Speaking of which, a son of a legendary prosecutor in LA.
It's going to be very interesting to see what happens with the recall election of Gascon. So,
oh my God. All right. Well, you know what? I have to apologize ahead of time, and I know you guys will have to apologize as well. We do have another story, and we should feel ashamed because we're all white. So
I'm so ashamed that after I talk a little bit about the story, I'm going to have to run to my white baby because I need to give her a bath, which is, I guess, what we do. I don't know. I should be ashamed of that.
So we have a malignant parasitic-like condition, whiteness. This is beyond the pale. And I bring it up.
What is the journal?
This is an actual journal. This is in MedPub or PubMed. Sorry. This is real. I mean, this is a psychiatrist with over 40 years in office experience. Imagine what he's doing to his patients. Imagine that.
I just worry when we start assigning things to immutable characteristics that we get back into a place that we've worked very hard to get out of.
Oh, you mean like Martin Luther King is turning in his grave? You know, that character, character of the person and not the color of their skin, all that weird stuff. Here we go. White people have a particular susceptibility to the parasitic condition, which he claims renders its host's appetites voracious, insatiable, and perverse. By the way, I pulled this off of Newsweek, okay? Not a right-wing bastion. Now, obviously, there's a thing called Ground News, and Allison's brought their CEO on. And I'm happy to say that Ground News shows me as a leftist. And part of the reason is that anytime I'm going to bring up an article or point, I'm going to try to find something that's counter to it. So if I find something that like this, I'm not going to pull it up on Fox News. If I can find another place like Newsweek, I'll pull it up there because I want to
looking for like verification of multiple sources to see what all sides say of a thing.
And
weird.
Yes, and to make sure that I'm not stepping into a crazy narrative or whatever else, or I can't be accused of it. So I do it often enough that I'm actually rated as a left winger, which I think is kind of funny. But regardless,
how rated where? I'm so sorry. I got distracted. What are you talking? Rated where, Eric?
Ground News.
What is
groundnews.com? Groundnews.com rates like Twitter accounts and publications, whether they lean left or right. It's kind of like a industry watcher. It's pretty good.
They aggregate all of the stories about a particular topic so you can read if you want, or like, I want to see how all these outlets cover this one story, then they aggregate it all for you.
That's fantastic.
And then they tell you if the story overall leans right or left, or I just
they make it easy to see if there's bias in the coverage like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So
absolutely.
Right. I gotta go, guys. It's been awesome. Emily, thanks for doing the news with booze. I'm sure that I'll keep watching.
How long do you guys normally stream for?
Usually we're done around this time, but like I have a babysitter, so I have a hard out.
There you go, hard out.
If Eric has guests and they want to keep talking, then also if it gets very spicy, I just blame it on my babysitter and I just leave.
I love that. You're like, we're not covering this at all. Goodbye, which is totally fair.
Because we bring Barnes and Biba in and all, then it starts to get great. No.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Then they start
Barnes and Biba, that was not a face made about you.
Like, I'm out. No.
Alison, it was so nice to meet you. I'm sure we will get to chat again.
Yes. Great to see you guys. Okay. Bye.
Have a good night.
See ya.
We never got back to Carol Baskin.
We did not.
Can we get back to Carol Baskin instead of whatever that article was? Because immutable conditions, I have deep concerns, but we didn't get back to Carol Baskin and talking about how your experience was of talking to Carol Baskin. She was on Dancing with the Stars. She's sort of famous sometimes.
Yeah, famous, notorious, depending on the...
Did you guys talk, because I haven't had a chance to watch it yet, because Housewives is in full swing and lawsuits. But did you guys talk about the fact that the family of her late husband was running ads about her during Dancing with the Stars in Florida?
I didn't talk about that. We spent about 35 minutes talking about the case, though. And what
Interesting.
happened that
I'll have to
day.
watch.
Yeah. So she was very gracious with her time about waking, what happened that morning, what happened that day, speculation on what could have happened.
Right.
I will say that we talked more on it than anybody expected, including me, by probably 25 minutes.
That's so interesting. I wonder what that's like to have to consistently relive that if you're going to continue to have any presence in the public eye at all, which seems to be how she makes her money. I can't imagine what that would do to a person. So,
Oh yeah. I mean, it's a weird position because I can't go into the interview saying, oh, okay, we're going to talk about Cass. Nothing ever happened. Nothing controversial. There was never a show that was, took over the whole world that everyone wanted to ask about. I had to ask about the stuff.
Yeah, you do. There's big controversy and a big show.
Right. So that was weird. But then I do have a rule, and you've been on the show, you've been a guest, and no matter who, you're my guest. And I care about every single guest. And it's not up to me to prove somebody right or prove them guilty or prove them innocent or do anything. I thought that the best service I could give was to talk to her and have her share as much as I could make her feel comfortable sharing. And it's not up to me to do anything with it. There's many, many people, trust me, who are watching. And they can help move it forward.
Right.
And, hopefully prove, I actually kind of hope that she maybe had guilty knowledge and didn't necessarily do anything, because I don't like to think of people doing things. And maybe I'm a little Pollyanna or whatever, but murder's a big damn deal in my head. To go all the way to
you work in criminal law long enough and you're like, was it just the one murder? We can deal with just the one.
I guess, but I'm not.
It is not to make light. It is a very big deal. It is a large accusation. We saw two things can be true at once, right? There are questions about her for sure, but someone also plotted to kill her and went so far as to potentially hire someone, not potentially because he's in prison for it, but to hire someone to take her life. So there's like these two competing crazy things. And then her in the legal battles with him and then winning the legal battles with him. It's just, the whole thing is so incestuous and bizarre and like crazy and covered in leopard print. It's just insane to me.
Right. And also, to be fair, I liked Tiger King. I thought it was a really cool, fun show.
I liked Tiger King too. Very interesting.
It was absolute propaganda. Absolute propaganda. And
well, it wasn't a documentary.
No, it was a hit piece. I mean, it's like, would you want to be Carol Baskin? Let's be honest. Would you want to be her? Because she was set up in that show. Narrative was put down. I even read this to her, but I think it's Albert or Edward Bernays. He's behind Propaganda. He wrote a book, Crystallized Public Opinion. Highly recommend it. But there's 6 steps to propaganda. Number 1, create a small window of doubt or uncertainty. Number 2, develop doubt through targeted questions. 3, introduce questions that enhance confirmation bias. So, okay. Okay. That's going on. 4, display information that displays the bias on occasion. Then 5, this is probably super important. You got to time it right. Reward the subject for having come to the conclusion and figuring it out. And then number 6, expose the subject to a negative event in order to solidify said bias. Now think about how it was rolled out with the different music, the different tones, the different cuts. It absolutely was setting up there's a story about her. Now, I'm not saying, again, two things can be true at once. I don't know. I genuinely don't know if she's guilty or not. And honestly, in my opinion, it's not up to me. It was my job to get a good interview.
Right.
And that's
Oh, absolutely.
all I wanted to do is just get.
No, none of us are law enforcement who have to figure this out. We're all watching it unfold because going into watching Tiger King, all I knew was there was this kind of crazy personality that might be in a throuple and big cat I didn't realize there could be big cat zoos. I lived in California. Look, I lived in California 99% of my life until we moved to Tennessee. I was unaware that this was a thing. The law nerds and my friends from other places in the country are like, oh no, this is a thing. So it exposed me to stuff I was unaware of existed within these fine United States. But I was in on, the Joe Exotic personality, and he ran for governor, and it's this whole wild, right? And then it took a spin to this unsolved murder and these lawsuits, and then his obsession with taking her down. It was very strange. I felt like it turned in the middle.
Right. I mean, I actually understand that too. There's so many crazy elements because, he was set up. He's a walking caricature. And the problem is that I will say that she likes attention just like he does.
Of course.
Both have a narcissistic side to them. Okay. I'll just say that I am not a therapist.
Attention-seeking behavior. Very high.
They very much enjoy it. Now, he's very open and blatant about it. Like, he dresses ridiculous. He does everything, over the top.
He's very loud.
And he's in your face. I think that he rages on her for what he perceives as hypocrisy. That, oh no, you're doing the same thing. You have these cats, you have these things, and you're playing like I'm this monstrous blah, 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 blah. And that kind of deep-seated hatred, that can plant, real bitterness. And I think that's what it is. And keep in mind that there was a lot involved. She owns all of his properties?
I do. From the lawsuits now.
Yeah.
Like, we need a Tiger King follow-up. Because she won the lawsuits and there was no money to pay it. So she signed over. I haven't even followed up with this in my content because I covered some of the Tiger King lawsuits. But she won the lawsuits and won the properties because there was no money to pay. And he's in prison for other shit. So the greatest, though, was the stretch limo waiting outside of the jail or outside of his lawyer's office because he thought he was going to be pardoned by Trump. And he was very, very upset when he was not pardoned at the end of the Trump presidency.
Well, okay, I got to say something. If he's not going to pardon Assange, there's no way in hell he should have pardoned Joe Exotic.
Agreed.
Snowden and Assange, yes, I can see that. There's at least an argument on that, but he didn't do those two. So if he, oh no, oh hell no.
If it was just the big cats, it would be different. But the murder for hire is a really hard sell. Especially because he could still effectuate the murder for hire and the individual is still alive. So it's great. I had there was a DA, when I was still in Long Beach, trying 2 murder for hire cases because she tried the person who hired and then she tried the person who was hired. It was stuff you wouldn't believe if they put it in a show like Tiger King. You'd be like, this didn't happen. This didn't go down this way. And I was like with my court files sitting in that courtroom day after day, watching that trial, trying to do my own work because it was just fascinating. But it's something that happens, I think, more than people are aware and is prosecuted in, little local courts all around the country. But the murder for hire is kind of a hard stop.
I was going to say it happens, and probably because it works. There's probably a lot of murder for hires that just are never known.
I don't know. I would like to not put that out there that the lawyer says murder for hire work. You will all be caught and go to
yeah, absolutely. Well, you know what? The one that really troubles me, and
Google will track you and know what you have done.
Well, I want to know if you've run into this because I've had Sheila Wysocki on it, and she kind of handles like lost case stuff. There's a lot of cases out there, especially where it's a male who coincidentally commits suicide in an odd fashion, and there's questions about their romantic situation, shall we say, over and over. And I hate to say, it's kind of like, yeah, maybe they're Epstein. You don't really know. It's like, did they actually kill themselves? And that seems to be a popular way of disposing of a problem.
We're gonna turn into how to get away with murder here real quick.
No, I'm not.
This is a Barnes Viva, Eric Hunley, Emily Baker conversation. I think there's a lot more that goes on than we're aware of goes on, and I always am hesitant to talk about things I know and have seen because I never want to be instructive.
I don't want you to be instructive.
The things that go through my head. I think there are definitely the thing that bothers me most about where we've gotten to as like a social media kind of driven society is that asking questions is now frowned upon. And with a lot of things, we need to be able to ask questions, because as you get down the road, and facts take time and prosecutions take time and truth coming to light takes time. But as you ask questions, instead of going, oh yeah, obviously that's the way it is, it's like, why do I believe that's obviously the way that it is? And that evaluation could be very helpful. And in circumstances where it's like, that all seems a little too convenient, maybe it's too convenient. Like when things are too convenient, it should raise your red flag and you should ask more questions. Like, this feels too convenient, because often there is no such thing as just a coincidence.
It's called Occam's razor. I mean, simplest answer, right to there. But I'm not trying to say a how-to. I'm actually saying the opposite of, please, police who are very overworked or whatever. I know that you're overburdened, but please don't close it too quickly. Even if you just kind of put the files on the side and deliberately make phone calls, because I understand sometimes you just don't have anything, just to keep the pressure on in some way to where it doesn't feel like it. Maybe they'll get nervous over time, because that's got to be a lot of pressure if you potentially did something. But if you close it too quickly, I don't know. It's very, very frustrating to me. And I feel like things slip through the cracks just because it's like, okay, I've got a logical resolution. Well,
things slip through the cracks because of volume, lack of funding, and lack of time. I mean, it's much easier to deal with the things that are pretty close to being solved than things that are very far away. And technology, I think, is going to change that. But now we're looking back at closed or open cold cases going, gosh, I wish they still had the evidence to this. I had cases where evidence had been destroyed by accident. I mean, the amount of, and you're like, how did this happen? And it's just, humans make errors. Police are humans. They make errors. And when you have a job with high stress, long hours, high workload, things can slip through the cracks, and it's unfortunate. I don't know how we unwind that, but I do also, I mean, I was a prosecutor, so victims' rights and kind of the sanctity in giving people at least some closure is really important. And it can be very hard to get, especially with unsolved cases. I think technology is making it better. So
yeah, some cases will never be solved. I get that, and I understand that. So I'm
look, no one's perfect.
Sure.
No one's perfect. Things leave traces. Things online leave traces. Things, in person leave traces. It's just whether all of those traces have gotten picked up and have been detected so that you can start tracing those together. I just don't want technology to get us to the Minority Report from Tom Cruise. Like that's where I'm like looking at things and people are like, no, you said this, therefore clearly you think that. I'm like, wait a second. We're like prejudging crimes. Hasn't anyone seen Minority Report? How old is that movie? Why does no one know this?
Well, we're doing that with social media and your opinions already. I mean, that's Orwell. Orwell wrote about it before because it's thought crimes and confession by projection, as Viva will say quite a lot.
I like how Viva says confession by projection quite a lot. It's interesting. So yes, Viva's like, I'm game. We're going to have a crime. We're going to have a crime cast and chat about it.
Oh, but absolutely. Barnes, your
it's
game.
It is interesting stuff. Robert Barnes said toughest, smartest detectives ever met were the cold case guys from New York City. They were on the Amy Cooper case. I mean, cold case detectives is a whole nother thing because the thing people forget about a job, any job, and I think it's why creators have burnout, as you see how my mind now works. I think it's why creators have burnout. As humans, we like getting positive feedback in our work. We like knowing our work is done. Working cold case, your work is never done. You're constantly looking, your work is not done. And there's often no payoff at the end because you've succeeded at something. It's so much more gratifying to be like, hey, this person shot that person and it's on a Ring camera and we take it into court and somebody goes to, it wraps it up and you have that like, okay, job well done. Bad guy caught, victim's family has closure. It's very, very hard to be tenacious when you don't know if there's going to be resolve and you have those open loops that you're living with. So it is very difficult. But I feel like, as I was talking about movies, I feel like we're living in between Idiocracy and Minority Report. I'm confused.
Yeah, except the idiots are anyway.
Idiocracy is prophetic and it frightens me.
Yeah, and what's so beautiful about it is there's some cool stuff about the making of it because Idiocracy itself was just dumped on. I mean, they put it out with zero budget, zero ads, zero everything. They pretty much did the same thing with Office Space, and both of them like caught on through cultural references over time. It's a crazy situation that Mike Judge may be one of the smartest people on the planet who did Beavis and Butthead. So
I love Beavis and Butthead too. But this is my generation. I love Beavis and Butthead. I love Idiocracy. I loved Office Space. But the lawyers in court being sponsored was one of my favorite things in Idiocracy. And as I was watching the Mayweather Logan Paul exhibition, not a fight, at the end, did you watch it?
No, God, no. Why would I waste my money? I mean, besides, honestly, I think that Jake is the boxer. Out of the two of them, I think Jake is actually a dangerous person.
Jake's a bit unhinged.
Yes. No, I mean, Jake Paul.
Seems
if it was Jake Paul versus Floyd Mayweather, I actually think there could have been something there.
Absolutely threatened to kill Jake Paul. So I wonder if we'll see them get in a ring because Floyd made like $100 million. So he was talking about his shorts being sponsored for $30 million. And so it kind of all came together. I'm like, it's like
where he was holding Logan up possibly. Yep. So it wasn't an official knockout and that could line it up. But I don't know. There's something that reads off of Jake that there's an edge, a genuine edge in there. And you put that edge and that size. And this is the problem I have. Floyd Mayweather has more skills than both of them put together all day, inside out. He is one of the most skilled boxers alive. It only takes one hit, especially when you've got a 50-pound weight ratio on them.
At least 50 pounds and that huge reach advantage.
Yes, you get the leverage. It only takes one. But
I think he was confident enough that Logan, with one fight under his belt, did not have the skills to get lucky for one loss. So I think he was like, $100 million is worth it, even if everyone clowns me. I don't care. He called it multiple times in the press conference after legalized bank robbery. He's like, I don't care. Say what you want. Say what you want. It's a legalized bank robbery, and I don't even care. He wasn't even sweating in the press conference afterwards.
Yeah,
it was quite something. I'm here for the cultural moment of it all. The Showtime stream was a mess. I can only imagine that their servers were completely overwhelmed because the stream was disastrous and continued to cut out. But yeah, I think that of the two, Logan is trying to find him. I mean, I didn't realize how young both of these guys are. Logan is 26 years old. Jake's 24. That said, me at 24 was like married and going to law school. So they're 24 and my 24 are not the same. But I think Logan is really trying to find himself as an adult and is finding some peace through
he's actually mature
routine. Yeah, I think so too.
With his whole thing in the forest, the Japanese forest. I'm not going to go into detail. I'm already dancing on the pin.
The the fantastic and epic shift of demonetization on YouTube, Adpocalypse 1, brought about by Logan Paul.
Yeah.
Yep.
I actually think, I don't think he was heavily guilty to start. I think it was more of like, oh my God, I'm in trouble for myself. But I do think he has been learning empathy. You know, and I'm sorry, he was a young male. You know, what's the old joke? If you want to stop all crime, lock up all males from the age of 18 to 29 or some garbage like that, which is kind of true. His brain wasn't completely developed yet. He's
There's
immature.
definitely an impulsivity that goes along with that age. And the impulsivity. And I also think with creators not having a team around them, like a conscious on your shoulder going, maybe this isn't a good idea, because I can see how creators get into this circle. And we saw it with David Dobrik too. Now we've like YouTube Inception, but we see it with David Dobrik too. Like it has to be more, it has to be crazier, it has to be bigger, like more crazier, bigger, more crazier, bigger to get the views, to get the clicks, to get the money. And it becomes this cycle where I don't think they can see a stopping point. Easy for me to sit here in my 40s and look back, but you guys can, everyone watching could think of an example of, you know, a group of friends that was like more crazy or bigger that ended up with either somebody getting hurt, somebody getting in a car accident, somebody falling through a roof, jumping off a roof into a pool, whatever it is. We see that. But I think Logan is trying to use boxing and routine to kind of ground himself in some kind of a structured life, where I still see Jake just wanting to be off the rails.
Jake,
like
the younger brother. He's also the younger brother, and there's a lot there. Their father is very odd. Like he seems like more of a brother himself than a father, from what I've
definitely
seen.
Wants to be one of the Paul brothers,
which is very, very, you know, and that's not
Paul Senior
helpful.
needs to be a senior. Somebody needs to be the adult in the room.
Exactly. And the things, I actually can understand it. Weird, you know, experience, and I'm gonna, you know, bring Barnes up because he's here, but it was tied to him. He did the debate with Nick Fuentes, who shall we say is a very challenging personality and very controversial on the internet with pretty good reason. But
I have no idea who Nick Fuentes is, but I'll take your word for it.
Have you heard of Richard Spencer? Okay, well, good. Your life is probably more complete because of it. Anyway, they had a debate. Nick Fuentes has an army. Some would call them a troll army. A lot of them. And I had Barnes on that night, and the show got brigaded. So I've never had a show ratio before, but boy, that was fun. I mean, we're talking
interesting.
You know, I had like a 30% like versus 70% like dislike ratio. I mean, they made it very clear that they didn't like Barnes, therefore they didn't like me. And they hit the show, which, you know, is fine. But then I thought about it and I was like, wow, my views were more than double the average episode of News with Booze. Now I could receive this two ways. One, I don't care for that, you know, contentiousness and everything personally, maybe because I'm old, but as a creator, I'm like, that's a lot of views. And I could see going down to pass saying, hey, Barnes, can you pick a fight with somebody else? Or can I pick a fight with you know, some David Packman?
Oh, you're treading into the Gabby Hannification of YouTube right now with the can we stir up these fake internet fights? Though I think these last ones are real, but can we stir up or capitalize on blowing things out of proportion for to keep it going and to keep relevant? I think it would be very easy to fall into as a younger creator. I think as an older creator, I don't have drama in my life, and so I don't invite drama into my space on the internet as well. But again, it's easy to say in my 40s, I can see 20-year-old Emily, because thank God there wasn't the internet. Well, as it is now, when I was in my 20s, we didn't have cell phones that had video cameras on them. I can see 20-year-old Emily making bad choices, because 20-year-old Emily made bad choices, but there was nothing around to capitalize on it and to then impact my future from it. So I can see how the egging on of all of this on the internet kind of extrapolates it all times a million. And then the money on YouTube, I know where I am with my channel, and I look at the money that I make and I'm like, these kids, and I've talked to creators that are much larger than myself about money behind the scenes. I'm like,
for now.
You-
You're blowing up like crazy. So
I still do
Well,
what I do
congratulations.
behind the
I can
scenes
tell.
in the consulting world. But looking at people going, you know what? I'm making $50,000 to $100,000 a month.
Which is insane. I can't even comprehend.
Right, but it can ebb and flow so quickly that would be a very interesting thing to navigate alone in your house on camera. I mean, at least with traditional celebrity, they're generally on movie or TV sets with other celebrities where at least they can talk about the experience of being that. YouTube creators often are alone in their home with a camera, and then you see them like last night, flame out on Twitter with their audiences because there's
Now,
no
is
one
this
else around to talk to about it.
Trisha Paytas thing?
Yes.
Okay, I'm tangentially, like sort of.
I have deep thoughts on that too.
Okay,
but
well, I'll be super.
We've
controversial.
gone to it is no longer news with booze. I'm sorry, you all. It all comes
No,
back
it's
around to
okay.
pop culture
No.
because it is news. It's YouTube news with booze.
Okay. Nobody's
Culture
complaining.
is everything, you guys. Look.
Change subject. Guess I like.
Oh, it's a lightsaber lip. They're not called lightsaber lip glosses because, of course, but they do light up. So, and there's a mirror, so you can like, things that are perfect for me being old and being able to see. So,
Awesome. Okay, we got keep going.
Anyway, yeah, it's very interesting. So it's a very different dynamic. I know we kind of spun out here from Idiocracy and boxing, but it's interesting to me, creator life.
She sent me White Claw, Barnes.
I'm basic. Look, I've got Tennessee whiskey in the pantry, but I cannot drink it and stream because I flush so badly when I drink. White Claw is lightly alcoholic enough that I do not flush horribly red when I drink. I have a very substantial alcohol flush response.
Well, Barnes is from Tennessee, by the way.
I didn't know that.
Chattanooga area, I believe.
I love Middle Tennessee. It is lovely. I am so happy we moved from Southern California. I got stuck behind farm equipment today and put it on my Instagram stories. I was like, traffic jam. But the roads are beautiful and there's trees and the air smells good and the weather's dynamic and the people are lovely and diverse and the food is good. We found tons of great Mexican food. Shockingly, everyone in the kitchens are also from Southern California. We're like, oh my God, this is so good. They're like, yeah, our head chef is from here.
Yeah,
our second chef is from here. I'm like,
gang.
oh, California.
That's how they broke up the gangs, is they spread them out all around the country and just dropped them in different cities and then started new chapters.
Stop.
Gangs.
I have seen less graffiti in downtown Nashville than I've seen in any city I've been in.
Oh, I'm sure. Well, it's not acceptable.
Yeah.
I mean,
society has rules.
Well, some do.
It's nice to live somewhere where I didn't prosecute because I don't know all the things. I knew very well gang culture in LA County. And so you would see it. You would see the tattoo. Like there was a time we were at the aquarium with our kids and there were a couple gang members. They were out with their families. They're allowed to go to the aquarium too. But as a prosecutor, I was like, we're in the area where my courthouse is. I don't know if they will recognize me or not. I don't like any of this. Now I just don't know. And I get to just not know. And it's kind of nice. It feels like I get to relive my life and just go back to being cautiously optimistic as opposed to overly cynical and cautious.
You're in a great spot. And congratulations. I mean, I feel like you've plotted your own destiny and you found a path. And you're able to, you can enjoy a traffic jam because it's charming. And who cares if you're late?
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to do a stream later or whatever, and you'll try to be on time. But you know what? If you're not on time for your stream, people probably get over it. You can probably make a phone call or something.
My audience knows I run a gently late sometimes.
Well, there you go. And Alison, she's usually late on the show. She's putting away her horse or what. But that's sort of the magic, and I think that's really awesome. And your having that allows you to feel free mentally and spiritually enough to do the show, to have the motivation and the spirit and the joy while you're doing it. Because you're terrified that it'll become a job, and then that starts to be like,
Yeah, we don't want creating to become a job. I mean, it is my job. It's my full-time job, but I love it. But also taking the I don't know, environmental stresses away, definitely allow for more space to kind of process through things and allow you to not. And that's one thing about live streaming. You have to know yourself pretty well so you don't go off the rails. When you end up with like Gabby Hanna on the computer memed because you're not grounded as a human when you're going on live stream. And it doesn't matter if you try to delete it, it's up. So as a streamer, you have to have the space to kind of actually know who you are, because unfortunately, as we get back to the cultural conversation we had earlier, I'm seeing a greater awareness of others, awareness of how language can hurt others, of how stereotypes hurt others. There's much more awareness, but there's less capacity to allow people to grow and change and make mistakes. And I don't understand how those two things exist, because I'm like, well, if we want to be more aware of things and times have changed and awareness has grown, we also have to let people grow and change too. So if you don't let people grow and change, then
this may be an excuse. Unfortunately, I have guests almost all the time, but you're riffing and you're filling up space. Like, I don't know how Nick does it. Okay. Nick Ricada just drops and does 3-4 hours, and then he goes to Twitch and does a couple more hours. I mean, literally hours every day. And when you're just talking and throwing it out there, whatever, stream of consciousness, oh, hey, it's content, so I got to talk about something. Give me that. You're going to probably say some very foolish things, and you don't necessarily mean to. So I can see where, the more grounded you are and the more principled you are, whatever, having internal code or what have you, you're less likely to really do an unforgivable thing. So you'll just stick in the stupid things versus the reprehensible.
Right. I think most people aren't.
Alcohol, Eric. It's called alcohol.
No, I think for me, because I do try, I mean, if I was just doing conversational streams, I could easily do a 3-hour stream. But when I'm trying to answer questions, engage the chat, and do legal stories, my brain will run out of energy. I get tired
because you're like, I gotta go. Oh, I'm lingering. Oh, I'm reading too long. I'm busy reading.
Not be boring is. I love that. Not be boring is in your mind. Not be boring is never in my mind. I'm always just like, don't pronounce something stupidly. Like, I'm very self-conscious, but I share that I'm ADHD and dyslexic. So I do get very self-conscious about reading out loud, and it does take a little bit more energy. It's funny that what I chose to do was read lawsuits on the internet. It's like reliving all of my 3rd grade trauma every single day. But I'm worried about those little things. And I think because I am dyslexic, it takes a bit more energy to read legal filings and news documents and parse through them and give actual analysis that might help, and actually not just rip on the parties and their attorneys unless it's Triller, and then I'm just going to make fun of them. So,
well, and I have a belief that dyslexia and ADHD are actually superpowers, and that's not an indulgent statement to that, but I have the top body language experts in the world, and there's a large number of them who are dyslexic or ADHD or both. And very commonly people are both. It seems they seem to run, well together. And I think it's super effective. Like David Boies, I think is how you say his name. He was the guy who brought down Microsoft in the federal case, the court case. He's extremely dyslexic to the point of, I don't know if he's even able to read very well at all. Because of that, he has entire cases memorized, knows every nuance of what's going on in the jury, because it's an adaptation. So he can't hold this information, so everything else can be sort of like being blind and hearing really well. I think that is incredibly powerful and useful to you to maintain your entertainingness. That's a new word.
Entertainingness. I think there's definitely a different way to think when you're ADHD, and there's times it can come across as rude, because when you're not interested, your brain literally just shuts off and you're like, wait, no, come back. But when you're interested, like the hyper focus side of ADHD is like, it feels like a superpower. The thing is, my hyper focus likes to drive towards video games. I think if I had grown up at a different time, I would have been very heavily into esports, because that hyper focus where you see and hear nothing else. It's how trial worked so well for me, because you're hyper focused and hyper present in the moment. Athletes call it being in the zone. But athletes have to train to get there, where the ADHD brain will drop into there sometimes, depending on the activity. And so it's interesting because you learn how your brain works, and you also learn that you have to challenge norms, because you can't just say, oh, this learning style works for me, I'll just do what everybody else does. You can't just do what everybody else does. And so you start learning young that you have to find how it works for you. And I've done that my whole career. And now I'm here because I'm like, what works for me? Like,
right. Well, so
and
you're
then you find what works.
reverse engineering everything, and you're not doing the same thing everybody else is. Thus, there's another group who has a lot of dyslexics and ADHD, CEOs, especially
Doesn't surprise
founders.
me at all. Yep.
And there you go. You know, you just said, oh, yeah, nothing will be, you have to find your own path. And
You have to find your own path, and you're like, I can't adhere.
nobody's done before.
Yeah. I don't want to adhere to the way other people are telling me to do it. I would like to do it my own way. The only way I can do it my own way is this. So fuck it, we're just doing that. Also, the hyper focus does lend itself well for me. I can't speak for everybody with ADHD, but for me, when I'm interested in something, the hyper focus will definitely lead to driving that, finishing a project, or you know, doing a video, doing a deep dive, playing video games for 15 hours at a time with, you know, forgetting to go to the bathroom, me in college. But you will narrow down that focus as you're trying to complete a task. So for founders, a lot of people are like, who has the grit to get through this? Well, that's ADHD hyperfocus. It's like, no, I will make this happen, and I will have a headlong determination to just do this and nothing else until this is complete. La 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 la. So I get it. I get that. I get that. So.
And now you're founding an amazing YouTube channel that's blowing up everywhere.
I mean, we're doing the thing, and hopefully bringing facts. Sometimes a little bit of fuckery. I say facts, not fuckery. But the thing is, when we get into fuckery, I call it out and I say, this is me getting into some fuckery because I'm just going to gossip and talk a little bit of shit about this legal filing that I hate the most.
That's the fun part.
But that's the fun part. But also the thing that I'm most angry about in most media outlets is they don't tell you the difference between the two. Tell me what the facts are. Tell me how you think about it. Separate the two. Just separate them instead of trying to blend it all together so you're not sure what the facts are at all. You just get the opinion about it, never get the actual fact.
Wait a minute. Is your shirt say facts? Is that a censored shirt?
Yes, this is. My other one was dirty. I have a censored one because my kid really wanted one to wear to school. And my husband really wanted one. And I had a number of law nerds who are like, I want to wear these out. I'm not comfortable wearing the word fuckery out in public. So I made the facts, not foolishness for those who want to show the law nerd pride.
You can't do the asterisk, the F asterisk CK.
I took a vote. And so we have this option for the kids and the adult option as well.
So when you go on CNN, you can say it's on the facts, not foolishness.
Don't know if CNN is the right fit. I don't know if news media outlets are the right fit. Andy Cohen, E-Entertainment News. I could do that.
Oh, well, there you go. Well, yeah, I mean, you're already kind of partway there with H3H3 now. So.
I know, and Phil DeFranco referenced one of my videos too. I was just so floored. But it's trying to be a resource. Yeah. Trying to be a resource in the space where I'm interested. And it's not that I'm not interested in politics. I find it much more exhausting, where I follow pop culture anyway and really love it. And we talked about this a little earlier. The reason I stick to pop culture quite a lot is because I do want people to learn how to see both sides of a thing. And so when we talk about facts, I talk about both sides of a thing. And it's easier to do when we're talking about a housewife that everybody's like, ooh, what's the tea? Tell me about Erica Jane and her, $100,000 Jaguar ring or whatever. And is that community property? Is it not community property? How do these two bankruptcies work? People are interested, and they're interested in the
It
parties.
doesn't really matter.
But it doesn't really matter to any of us. At the end of the day, it matters to the clients that were Tom Girardi's clients that are now victims. And it matters to all of us that are watching this happen, but it will not impact most people's day-to-day life. So they can actually learn law and how to parse arguments on two sides without it actually upsetting their either moral compass or their view of where they're at politically, because it's very hard to move people off the mark. We talk about confirmation bias, but with pop culture, there isn't a lot of confirmation bias. People are like, oh, I'm just interested in what's happening with Britney Spears. And then we can have the conversation about how the law works, and people can go, wait a second, that's kind of fucked up. And you're like, right, it is kind of fucked up. Let's have that conversation about how we got here. But it's not so entrenched in this and that. And if you think this, then you must be that. And if you say you're this party, then you must believe this way, because it's not. And most people are more nuanced than that anyway. So with pop culture, we can take away some of the nuance and get to the law stuff.
And you're not pissing off half the people half the time.
Oh, I'm still pissing off half the people half the time.
Okay. Well,
for sure. For sure. I got comments. So I did this video on Josh Duggar. The comments are hilarious. I did a video on Josh Duggar. Josh Duggar has been accused of awful, horrible shit regarding images of children. You can go watch my videos. They're properly demonetized over on my channel. We won't bring that pain to you. But I got people commenting on my cursing and like, I'm going to pray for your filthy mouth. I'm going to pray for this. And I'm like, you're watching a video about someone who's accused of really horrific shit, and you're worried that I said shit? Oh, fuck. This is not the channel for you. Go yoke thyself off my channel. So it's interesting. I do still piss people off. And there's times when people see what I say filtered through their own lens. And so I will see on the same video people saying, well, clearly you're super left because you said this, or clearly you're super right because you said this. And I'm like, when I tell you that I am really like politically questioning and very purple in the middle, it's because my beliefs fall on a lot of different parts of a spectrum. So
Barnes has your back.
I know that, Barnes. Thank you. I agree with you. This just played out on Real Housewives of New York, where they were giving the Ebony, who's an attorney, a hard time for using cursey words. And I felt so attacked. I will clutch a pearl, but only ironically.
I hear a cat.
So.
I thought I heard a cat.
Oh, there might be. They sneak in here.
No, that might be mine.
It might be yours. Mine sneak in here. They're very loud. Anyway, we've gotten far and away, but the point of the thing is that no matter what you talk about on the internet, you're going to piss off half of the people. And I think knowing thyself is important. I also think we have to get back to a place where we can let people grow and learn and mature, especially people who've been on the internet since they were, teens, like the Paul brothers. Not that I don't think the Paul brothers suck, but I think Logan is growing and trying. Jake concerns me a little, but 24, we'll see.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I mean, again, you take a questionable personality and situation, and then you give them $50,000, $100,000 a month.
You give them money and notoriety and yes men.
And then you say, grow up.
Yeah.
How's it going to work out for you?
I think Logan's scandal. I think of all the YouTubers that I've seen and commented on and watched, I think Logan actually took his scandal like under advisement and was like, I have to change something. And I have to realize this hamster wheel that I was feeding. And I think that the algorithms don't care about creators per se. The the TikTok algorithm just cares that you put up more content, and every fourth or fifth one, if you already have a big audience, is going to do really well. But as long as you keep feeding it, and it's the same with YouTube, as long as you keep feeding the algorithm, something will hit. But then the fear of not feeding the algorithm feeds that cycle. I don't know. Creator mental health is something that's going to continue to be a topic that we need to address. But we've gone well far and away.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And you know what? We probably should wrap it up.
Probably should.
I haven't off from doing this again.
No, I love Eric. I always love chatting with you and love coming on and love having. You can't have a nuanced conversation in a 5-minute video. You just can't. And conversation, I think, is getting. Can we just make conversation happen? Getting back to conversations where you can actually explore different ideas, different topics, and different viewpoints of things. I love that Alison brought that video and was like, how do you see this? What's your perception of this thing? Because my perception comes from my lens. Your perception comes from your lens. How are we all perceiving this thing? And you can do that in a intellectual and curious way versus a hostile way. And the internet right now is like, what do you mean you don't see it the way I see it? We shouldn't all see things the same way.
Alison's a pro. And to her credit, yes. She said earlier, she explained to me very fairly, deep down, she doesn't want to be, and she used a very harsh term, a meanie pants.
That is a harsh term. I'm offended by the words meanie and pants. I say I don't want to be a dick is how I say that, but I realize that that's a very gendered term and I need to find a new one. So.
Yeah, I like it. It works.
I'm trying. Don't be a dick was kind of my go-to motto with people. It's like, look, you'll get pretty far if you're just, don't be a dick. How hard is it? And people are like, can't you just say be nice? I'm like, be nice is too vague.
You were on an all-male team, for God's sake. You're going to say
yeah, I was. Don't be an asshole. Maybe that's better. Everyone has one.
Like douche. Douche is a good one. Douche is all around and swims and
oh God, we're gonna get very far and away. But yes, it's interesting because I was on an all men's water polo team in the 90s when you generally didn't see that shit happening very much. And I'll tell you, my freshman and sophomore year was a lot easier. And then everybody was 6'3". I don't know what happened at 16. Then everybody was 6 foot something, and I was like, why am I not still growing? And my mom's like, oh no, you're done. I'm like, what do you mean I'm done growing? I'm 5'6". I can't be a water polo player at 5'6", especially with the giant boys at 16. I can't. What?
You're walking into another conversation we'll have to do another time, which is of course, though, it could be a 6'6" trans athlete that could step right in.
And anyway. This is where I'm so torn because I see both sides of it. I see people wanting to be honored for who they are, but I also played in the biological differences between women and men at that age. And I don't know what the answer is because you're again bumping up against, people's right to be who they are, but also people's right to be who they are.
Well, it's like the whole Title IX thing. It's like, well, toss it. If you're saying that's irrelevant, toss the whole thing. Anyway, we'll say
Title IX is how I got to play men's water polo because they didn't have a comparable women's team, so they couldn't block me from the men's team. And then I went to college and discovered women from Eastern Europe that were also 6'2". And I was like, fuck, I'm just short.
Well, you're normal.
Just short, but in the water polo world, very, very short. But anyway, it is what it is. It was what it was. I know the conversations right now, there aren't a lot of good answers for, but
but we can keep having
conversations. Just keep having conversations.
Emily D. Baker on YouTube and everywhere. Emily D. Baker. You can find her. She's amazing. She's a superstar. While you're here, I might get Emily back. So subscribe because if you want to see Emily again, you gotta subscribe.
Come subscribe to me at the Emily D. Baker all over the internet. Don't forget to hit the thumbs up. I don't think you asked them at all to hit the thumbs up. Hit the thumbs up.
I don't do that. I'm terrible. I suck at
y'all. Like the stream. It's probably demonetized. At least we can feel good about ourselves for having interesting and diverse conversations about everything and pop culture. So